there, my name is Becky, aka the Mocha Foodie Gardener and Rise Gardens Ambassador. In today's video, I'm going to share a few tips that I like to use when it comes to drying and storing my herbs. I love growing herbs in my garden. I think that whether you're a novice or an expert gardener, herbs should always be a part of your Rise garden. They are so low maintenance, very easy to grow, and they continue to produce. So, whether you're eating them fresh or drying them and using them later, they're a great addition to any garden. Now, when you're thinking about which herbs to choose for drying, you want to kind of have two schools of thought or two types of herbs in your mind. And even as I say that, I suggest that you take it with a grain of salt a bit because this is not a hard and fast rule, but just something to keep in mind when you're choosing what you're gonna dry. So you're gonna want to think about your low moisture content herbs. Those are your herbs that are kind of like the woody stems. Those are oregano, dill, rosemary. Those are going to be really great for drying. They dry very quickly. They preserve very well. Whereas herbs with a higher moisture content, thinking of like basil, chives, cilantro, sometimes those are better used when they're in a fresh dish. Thinking of like, salsa, putting them in a salad, bruschetta, those types of things. Guacamole, those are great. But again, these are not hard and fast rules. Those herbs do dry just as well. They just may take a little longer to do so. So let's take a trip into my garden and see what herbs I'm growing now and how I'm gonna go about clipping them and getting them ready for the drying process. I also have a few other herbs that are drying now, and we'll see how they've progressed. Okay, so now as you can see, I have a bit of curly parsley here, which is not quite ready to harvest yet, but just showing you guys its cute little curly leaves. I would use these as a garnish, or even seasoning is pretty good as well. Now here, looking at my basil, this is so lovely. I just love growing basil. Again, this is my high moisture content herb, but they will dry just as well. Again, it'll take a little longer. Now, one tip I do want to give you guys when you're clipping your herbs to dry them, you're going to want to cut off and discard any leaves that look like they're a bit diseased or have a potential nutrient deficiency. Moving on to my rosemary, I have another bit of rosemary down here. Again, I try to use that same rule of thumb, but maybe a little bit more when it comes to rosemary. You can see these two little sets here that kind of shoot off a bit. Although clipping your herbs does encourage more growth, I do think I want to give it a little bit more time to grow up and mature a bit more before I cut my rosemary. I almost forgot to point out my stevia herb. This is a really, really great herb for drying, and then you definitely want to dry these leaves, and then you want to crumble them and put them in the mortar and pestle, and you can use them as a sweetener. And from what I hear, the sweetness is almost like 10 times that of sugar. So I'm looking forward to trying this guy out. I've never grown my own stevia. I've only had store-bought. So today I'm just going to go ahead and clip some dill, because as you can see, it's really growing up very high. So I want to clip some down. All right, guys. So now the next step that you want to do is, once you've got your herbs, here I've got my dill, you're going to just want to take the stems and line them up. Now, some herbs still have leaves that go all the way down the stem. You're going to want to pull a few of those off, but in this case with the dill, you're in good shape. You're going to want to get some rope. My husband uses this when he's barbecuing or tying up a rotisserie chicken. It works just as well. You're going to get some string, tie it around there a few times, tie it in a little bit of a knot or a bow or whatever you like. Some methods, you can just hang them. I have some hanging in my kitchen now. You can also put it in a paper bag. This is actually one of my Rise Gardens paper bags that came with the trellis. You do want to poke holes in it so that it can get some kind of airflow. This is a bag of basil that I dried about 2 weeks ago. That's another thing you're going to want to do, is check your dried herbs every 2 weeks just to see how they're progressing. This is my basil. I tried to keep it all together, but once I untied it, everything is just a big mess. I did a mixture of basil because I actually happen to love basil as a tea. So I have holy basil, I have a little bit of lime basil in here, sweet basil. I don't know if I can pick that up on the audio, but it's not crinkly. And so again, these are high moisture based herbs, so they are gonna take a while to dry. Some of them do have that crunch, so that's an indication, but they're still not crumbling very much. In this case, I'd like to let it sit for a bit, for another week or so. Now what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna store this in a cool, dry, dark place. So if you've got cabinets, some people even use their drawers in their kitchen. Again, I hang mine to dry, that's an option. You can also use a dehydrator. I find that dehydrators are a little bit better because they don't really cook the herbs, and that's a key thing. You don't want the temperature too high when you're drying them, because that's gonna just release all the flavors and the herbs and the oils. So you wanna make sure that you're not drying them too high. Once your herbs are all dry, you're going to take them out of the bag, get them off of the little string here, and you're gonna wanna put them in an airtight container. If you leave them whole like this, just slightly crumbled, not very much, or just kind of where you just use your finger to just drag them off of the stem, you can get a good shelf life of about 6 months. Some people say you can push it to a year. Now, another way that you can use your herbs that will not last as long is you're gonna take the dried leaves, and as I mentioned with the stevia, you're gonna get a mortar and a pestle. You're gonna put the dried leaves inside of here, and you're just gonna go about grinding them down into like a nice powder, or maybe not even too fine, but I've done it with these because I like to infuse my butters and oils and stuff, so it's kind of a personal preference. I like to do it like that because I eventually mix them all together. So I've got my sage, I've got savory here, oregano, I've got some thyme coming, I've got my basil drying. So that's gonna be my little version of an Italian medley. When the herbs have been ground like this, the shelf life on this will only be a few weeks versus when they're whole dried, which again is 6 months to a year. And that's how you go about drying and storing herbs from your rise garden. I truly hope that you guys found this video very helpful, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.